So the Unsullied and Dothraki managed to walk all the way from Casterly Rock to what looks like Highgarden. It's good to see that Grey Worm is still alive. Brienne and Pod managed to get to King's Landing, and nobody seems surprised that they're there, so perhaps that letter that Sansa received was real. Maybe by the time she sent Brienne to King's Landing, she already consulted Bran about Littlefinger and knew that she was probably able to turn the veil against him and protect herself from him. So Jon, Davos, and Tyrion go to the Dragon Pit to meet Cersei. The Hound sees his brother and says intimidating shit to him, and everyone else seems oddly fine with this extra tension he's created. Then he goes under the floor to get the zombie. Bronn and Pod go off somewhere to get a drink or something, and you don't see them for the rest of the episode, so that was weird. Before they get down to business, everyone takes a moment to air their grievances, and Cersei tells Euron to take a seat after he challenges Tyrion. At first, Cersei doesn't buy the whole thing, but then the Hound comes back with a zombie in a box. It comes running out at Cersei, but the Hound yanks it back by its chain. They cut it in half, and its upper torso keeps crawling around. They cut its hand off, and the hand keeps wriggling around. Qyburn's reaction is the most interesting. He walks up to the hand and picks it up to examine it. You can tell that he sees a lot of interesting possibilities and maybe opportunities if he can figure these things out. Jon shows them that they can be killed by fire and dragon glass, but pretty much nothing else. Euron says that he's getting the hell away from these things and going back to Pike. Cersei says that she'll agree to a truce and even seems willing to recognize Jon as king in the north, but she asks him to pledge never to attack the other kingdoms. He says he can't promise that because he's bent the knee to Daenerys. Cersei's like, well, screw all of you then, no truce. Then she storms off. Everyone is all very annoyed at Jon for saying something so stupid, and Tyrion decides to try to talk to Cersei. Tyrion tries to convince her that he really wants what's best for the family, but Cersei has no interest in listening to that. He deduces that she's pregnant, probably because she keeps rubbing her uterus whenever she talks about the survival of her family, and she isn't drinking the wine he poured for her. She says she doesn't give a shit about anyone but herself, and presumably her posterity. Tyrion tries to convince her that fighting the dead is in her personal self-interest and the interest of their family. Cersei comes back out and says that she will send her armies north to help fight the White Walkers. In Winterfell, Littlefinger tries to convince Sansa that Arya has ambitions to be Lady of Winterfell. At Dragonstone, Jon and Daenerys weigh whether they should all sail north together or whether Daenerys should fly in on her own. The Northmen are unlikely to give her a warm welcome, but she decides to sail there with Jon anyway. Theon tells Jon that he intends to rescue Yara. When he tells the remaining loyal Greyjoys about this, they don't want to listen and one of them tries to kick his ass. Even though Theon's not very good at fighting, he persists until he's able to get the upper hand after the guy is baffled by his inability to kick Theon in his non-existent balls. He wins the fight and they go back to King's Landing. At Winterfell, Sansa calls Arya to court and makes it look like she's putting Arya on trial for treason, but really she's trying Littlefinger for all the skeezy shit he's done. She has been consulting Bran and knows all about him murdering Lysa and manipulating Lysa into murdering Jon Arryn, and betraying Ned Stark and trying to frame Tyrion for the attempted murder of Bran. He tries to weasel his way out of it, but Arya slits his throat. I hope she takes his face. That might come in handy for tricking Cersei. This was a very satisfying scene, but it felt to me like this is something that should have happened several episodes ago. The moment Sansa started worrying about Arya, she should have consulted Bran. Jaime prepares the Lannister army to go north, and Cersei explains that she was bullshitting about helping fight the army of the dead. She also explains that Euron isn't really running back to Pike. He's really going to Essos to pick up the Golden Company. Jaime refuses to cooperate and heads north to help Jon and Daenerys. Cersei threatens to have him killed, but Jaime calls her bluff. Sam arrives at Winterfell and talks to Bran. Bran explains that he can see through time and that Jon is really the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, which makes him a sand instead of a snow because he's a Dornish bastard, not a northern bastard. Sam tells him that Rhaegar and Lyanna were actually married and that he should warg back in time and see for himself. Bran does so and reveals that Jon's real name is Aegon Targaryen. At the same time, Jon and Daenerys do it on the boat, and Tyrion stands outside the door looking concerned for some reason. I had trouble figuring out what Tyrion is thinking at this point. Is he worried about a conflict of interest? They have the same interests, so I don't see why that would be the case. I'm pretty sure he doesn't know they're related, so that's probably not why he's cringing. At Eastwatch, the White Walkers finally arrive and the Night King comes riding to the wall on Viserion. Viserion breathes, I guess, blue fire or frost or something, and the wall comes down. I suppose it's probably blue fire because I don't see why frost breath would knock down the wall. Tormund and Beric run down the wall as they see the dragon coming, but it looks like they failed to make it to the bottom before it collapsed. That was the most frustrating thing about this episode. It seems implied that Beric and Tormund die, but it's not completely confirmed. That's gonna drive me nuts. I know a lot of people didn't like this season as much because it was more action and less intrigue, but I loved every episode more than the last. Action scenes without much setup or character development are boring, but this season has been a fantastic payoff for all of the story that has led up to it. I thought it was awesome.